My name is Stavros. I'm the author of The Tome of Six, Book 1 of The Faithful Force. And today I'm just going to do a video to do a bit of a review on these two longbows that I own.
And after testing the bows, I'll be talking about Gambeson armors and referencing historic and academic sources that give us insight into how they were constructed.
The one in my left hand over here is a 35-pound English yew longbow at 28-inch draw. It used to be 40 pounds, but it was damaged and I have repaired it, and so now it is drawing at about 35 pounds, and I will test that as well in a moment. So as I said, it's made of English yew, and it's made by Jean-Louis from Longbows, Belgique. Okay, the other bow I've got here is a heavier bow. It is 55 pounds at 28 inches, and it is made from Pacific yew, and the boyer is Jamie McDonald from Raven's Beak. So what I'll do now is, we'll just put, these are both 28-inch draws. I'll put a 28-inch arrow onto them. I'll use my measuring tool, and then we'll show the actual weight of the bows. So just warm it up a bit. Okay. So, getting there. 34.6, so about 35 pounds. Warm it up a little bit. It's a heavier bow, and it is recommended we warm them up. So that's that. And here we have 56.6. So again, 55 pounds, give or take. The bows are the draw weights as advertised. So we're first going to test obviously the 35-pound English yew bow, and what I'll do is I'll be reading out the weights of the arrows, and then firing them through the corner and calling out the speeds. So 366 grains is the first arrow. 120 feet per second. Now come around over this way and we'll just take some shots over the shoulder so I don't have to just keep shouting out. And you can also see the chrono yourself. So next one is 346 grains. 121 feet per second. Next arrow is 381 grains. 117 feet per second. Next arrow is 349 grains. 119. Next arrow is 356 grains. 122 feet per second. This one is 320 grains, so this is a bit lighter than the other ones. 122 feet. 313 grains, another lighter one. 124 feet. 373 grains on this one, a bit heavier. 120 feet. Bow done. What I'm going to do with the next bow, I'm not going to be using field tips. It's a heavier bow. We saw it's drawing about 56 pounds, so it is heavier. Generates more power. So I'm going to be using these arrows here with blunts on them. Okay, these arrows are heavier than the other arrows that I just shot, because we are using a heavier draw weight bow. So I'll be again calling out the weight of these arrows. So this one's 544. Do you want to just get on the side view, just so we can see I'm drawing at full draw length, but we'll be able to see the difference as well in the amount of speed. So okay, this one is 610 grains. This is I think my second heaviest of this batch. So 610 grains. 148 feet per second. I'm going to come around this side. Okay. Next one is 540 grain. 155 feet per second. You can see these arrows are a good 200, 250, some of them close to 300 grains heavier, and they're firing at 25 to 30 feet per second faster. So 544 grains. 153, and my last arrow is 560. So my 510 was my heaviest. I actually want to fire that one more time. Actually, the heavier one. I don't know if I drew it to full draw length. So what I say, 560 grains on this one. 152. The 610 grain one again. Just fire it one more time, just to make sure I do get that full draw length on it. 150. So that's that. I called out the arrow weights. We know the arrow speeds. We can work out the kinetic energy. We can see the difference between a 35-pound bow and a 55-pound bow. And what we're going to do in the future is we're going to be testing these two bows. Plus, I have another bow coming. Neither of these bows are war bows. The 55-pound bow is quite powerful. It should be producing roughly, I haven't done the maths yet, 40 to 42 joules of energy. So it is a pretty good bow for its weight, but it's not a war bow. I do have a war bow coming from Boston Bows. Ian Sturgis is the boyer. It is a 70 to 80 pound war bow, which is on the commonly accepted minimum side of the war bow range, but still it is a war bow. And what I'll be doing is I'll be testing all the bows, and I have a number of war arrows coming in. I have some from Will Sherman coming in. I have some from Shire Archery, Quiver Stock, various arrows, type 7 needle bodkins, different types of type 16s, because there are different types of type 16s. I have swept barb, tucked barb, the pointers, type 16. I have a Cressy war bodkin by Hector Cole. I have various arrows coming in, and we will run through the pacer and we'll fire them at these Gambesons. Now, Gambesons are textile armors. They are armors that are constructed with layers of linen. So I've got some examples here which I have made myself. So this one here is 26 layers of linen with a cotton canvas on top of it. This one here is 28 layers, and they're pretty sturdy garments, but they are also flexible. So this is the lightest armor that you can use while still being an effective armor for soldiers. I just wanted to say a couple of things about the Gambesons, so that we have a degree of confidence that we're constructing them in a historical manner. And so what I've done is I've gone and sourced some historical texts, some academic papers and whatnot, to find out how these were constructed, how many layers of linen were they constructed with. And the sources do vary, but also I think what I believe, and it's also what I believe is that the amount of layers that a Gambeson has in it of linen is dictated by its function. So whether it's going to be a standalone armor or whether it's going to form like a composite where it's the undergarment of a metal armor, whether that be mail, whether it be a brigandine, scale, lamella, or plate. So what I've done is I've compiled some sources here. So the first source is one that Todd from Todd's workshop relied on, and most people actually rely on this source because it's a very articulated source, and it's from Charles Fulkus, The Armourer and His Craft, and it's page 87. The use of fabrics and linen, and this source is it quotes is the ordinance from King Louis XI of France in 1450, and it talks about layers of linen between 25 and 31 layers of linen with a deer skin. Now I don't have a deer skin, I'm using cotton canvas as the layer, but I've translated the original text very roughly from French to English, and so I'll just read a little bit of it. So Jacques' work will be very profitable and advantageous to them for making war, seeing that they are pious people, and that having brigandines, they have to carry many things that a single man on foot cannot. And first of all, they need, said Jacques, 30 toils or 25, at least one deer hide. And if they are 31 deer hides, they are good. So I think a lot of academics think that last quote, 31 deer hides, is just a misprint. And it's referring to these toils. Now, toils in French is canvases. Okay, so linen canvases, that's how it translates. Another popular source is from the Armies of Feudal Europe, 1066 to 1300 by Ian Heath, and it's the chronicles of a chronicler, that's what he is, Nikitas Konyates, and he describes the quilted armor of Conrad de Montefret. So I apologize for any of my mispronunciations of a lot of these words. So yeah, please be kind. So he was the commander of the Byzantine army's Latinicon regiment in 1187, and he records that his gambeson was made of as many as 18 layers of red linen. Now we do know in this period, 1187, mail and gambeson were used together. I suspect that would be the case. This is a commander, this is a noble, this is an important individual. He wouldn't be going onto the battlefield just with linen on. He could afford better armor. So I suspect that these 18 layers refers to an undergarment, whereas the ordinance from 1450 from King Louis talks about 25 to 31. I believe that refers to a garment worn on its own. Thicker garments would have been worn on their own. The thinner garments were possibly worn in conjunction with other armors. Now, there are some sources that, that's not 100% accurate in terms of that's what happened all the time. Every soldier would have customized their gear for themselves, but typically that's what would have happened. We have another source, and this is another ordinance, and this is again from the 15th century, 1473. It's a Burgundian source, and it's the ordinance of Saint Maximin de Treves, and published October 1473. And this one does talk about gambesons, or a padded armor, I should say, in conjunction with other armors. So the mounted archer must possess a horse worth no less than 6 francs, and should wear a visorless sallet, a gorget, a brigandine, or a sleeveless mail shirt under a 10-layer jack. That might be referring to, sometimes they put padded garments on top of armors, but they wouldn't do that with the brigandines. They would certainly probably do that with the mail though. So it's a bit unclear here if they're talking about the layers being on top of the brigandine or underneath the sleeveless mail. But either way, it's talking about 10 layers of jack. And then we have the final source, and this is actually not it's a historical source, but it's from an epic. It's from a tale, it's from a saga, an Irish saga called the Tain Bo Culain, or the Cattle Raid of Cooley. And this is published in the Journal of the Society of Archers, Antiquaries, Volume 55, 2012 by David Jones. And the quote is, the Tain Bo Culain contains a description of linen and leather composite armor worn by the mythical hero Cu Chulainn. And the 10th and 11th century version of this saga talks about 27 tunics, brackets, sneslenti, worn next to the skin. Now, slesnenti, again, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, is believed to translate in modern terms to layers of textiles. So what we have here is historical sources that talk from 12 layers all the way to 31 layers of linen specifically. Now, they may have used cotton, they may have used other textiles. We know if we go to the ancient Greeks, the Macedonian Greeks were using linol thorax, which is another textile armor. I'm not sure what that was made out of though, and I think it was a glued, so it was a harder armor. I think it was glued together, if I'm not mistaken, but correct me if I'm wrong in my comments. That's what I believe. So we have historical sources from 10 to 31 layers, but I suspect, judging by obviously the Burgundian source, is that the lighter garments would have been worn under the armors, so under metal armors. So I do have a couple of lighter ones here. So this one is 6 layers of linen. It's very, very thin. Okay, and then I have another one which is 12 layers of linen, which is, I mean, still pretty sturdy, but this probably went underneath some mail, brigandine, plate, as part of an arming jack, if they're wearing plate. So yeah, that's what we have. They're the sources that I'm quoting, and we will be testing these armors in our next video. So please stay tuned. By then, hopefully I have my Warbow, and I also have all my war arrows, and we can, get some results, see what happens. Now, every test that we do, every test on its own is an anecdote. Okay, we can't draw too many conclusions from each individual test, and the reason is there's too many factors here that that can cause randomized kind of results. The first is your linen might be different from my linen when you do a test somewhere else. The bows, even though they might be the same draw weights, they could be firing, you know, slightly different from each other. Professor Clifford Rogers in his literature, 100 Years War Part 2, Battle of Agincourt, I believe it's page 111, he talks about 70-pound bows firing weight-appropriate arrows, and the kinetic energy that bow can produce is anywhere from 45 to 58 joules of energy. That's a 20% variance of joules of kinetic energy on the same bow. So my 70-pound bow or my 80-pound bow might not be the same as someone else's bow. The armors themselves, the Gambesons, the linens may be different. Actually, in fact, I do have 2 different linens here, so we can see I have 2 different linens. This one's 24 layers, this one's 12 layers, but the linen fabric is slightly different, so that might change results as well. So every test on its own is an anecdote. However, if we have 100 tests, 1,000 tests, what we do is we then start to create data points. Every single test acts as a data point that we can then then plot a trend of those data points, and we can get a better understanding on, you know, how many joules of energy does it, you know, take to penetrate, you know, a 20-layer Gambeson with a needle boggin, for argument's sake. Because if we do 100 tests on 100 different armors, and you know, and we know that we're using bows, for argument's sake, that are producing between 45 and 55 joules of energy, then we will get some consistent results, and we'll say, okay, this is the amount of joules you require to consistently defeat this type of armor. So we're just going to add data points. There are already experiments out there. Todd Cutler's done experiments, Scalagrim's done experiments. There's a couple blogs out there. Costume Girl has done a really nice blog on it. I've got a thesis by, I think it's Matthew Bain. He did his thesis on, he used an 76-pound bow he used with Gambesons. I have David Jones, which I quoted his source for the Irish Saga. He's done a test as well, which is published in the same journal. And I believe there are a couple other tests out there. I believe I've got about 9 tests where they are testing specifically Gambesons with arrows. And one thing we can do as well is we can compare how the different arrows interact with the Gambesons. So we can compare, if we have, let's say, 11 tests, and all those 11 tests are using type 7 needle bodkins and a broadhead type arrow, we can see how those 2 arrows also fare against each other on average across those tests. So we're just going to add another data point to the ever-growing list of data points, and then hopefully, you know, historians, YouTubers, enthusiasts like myself, we can start plotting that data, and we can get a better understanding on how these bows, these weapons, and these armors interact with each other. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it didn't go for too long. I will be, as I said, we'll be producing more videos. As I said at the start of the video, I am an author of a fantasy novel, the Tome 6, Book 1 of the Fate Force. I am an independent author, so your support will be much appreciated. Buying all these materials, getting the arrows, specifically war arrows, are quite expensive, because they're the kind of arrows that you take to a range to my local archery club to fire. These are specific for these tests, the chronos, all that kind of stuff. Please support me. I'm an independent, and thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this video.